everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Aga and we are currently in the shed of my garden in Chichester, West Sussex. Today is Saturday, 21st of March, meaning that yesterday we had equinox, and that means that moving forward from today, the days will be longer and longer. That means that we will have more sunlight and it will become warmer. We are officially in the spring. What that means is now is exactly the perfect time to sow tomato seeds. In this climate, specifically in England, where we are, this matters because from now on, we will have exactly the right and perfect conditions for the seedlings, for the seeds to germinate, and for the seedlings to survive and develop without much effort, really. So what I'm going to do today is, obviously, I am going to sow my tomato seeds. I have selected 8 varieties for this season. I have limited myself, believe me, and I am going to try to do a user-friendly tutorial-ish, if you would think of it, kind of video on how to sow tomato seeds so that you will have success with germination and also with the survival of your seedlings. So to begin, let me show you what you would need if you think about sowing tomato seeds for the first time. I will try to explain it in a very basic way. Obviously, if you are, whoever is watching, if you are experienced gardener and this is not your first time, you'll think that this is probably a very basic and too much detailed kind of video. But I'm thinking about myself 4 years ago when I was just getting started with gardening, and sowing tomatoes was something new to me. I had no idea how to do it, what compost to use, what pots and how many seeds and how deep to put them in the soil or what to do with them. Those kind of videos that show like the step-by-step process of even such a simple thing like sowing seeds is basically helpful and needed, I think, for people who just start their adventure with gardening. And we obviously want to support everyone. Gardening is such a lovely thing to do. And I hope that this video will be helpful to anyone who is just starting this adventure. So let's get going. What you will need is obviously some tomato seeds. I have 8 different varieties here, but don't be overwhelmed with this amount. You can start with just one and see how you like the process. And if you already know what variety of tomato you like the best, I would recommend to go for those and pick the one that you like to eat, because then growing them and harvesting and then eating will be the most enjoyable and worth the effort. But you will need some seeds, you will need compost, and then again, you might be overwhelmed with the choices of compost. I remember when I initially started learning about sowing seeds, I didn't know which compost to choose. So I'll talk about the compost that I have here in a second, but just let's go through what you actually need to start the process. So you need compost, you need some seeds, and you need a pot. Now, I have square typical gardening pots, but I started sowing my seeds in, actually I have still quite a lot of them in here, which I use them still, because my daughter really liked those yogurts. I would just keep them. There's some old spiders in there, hopefully dead. I kept those pots. I would drill holes in the bottom of them so that there is some drainage, and these served me as my pots to sow my seeds. I still use them. However, today I am going to be using those 8 pots, and the reason why, they fit perfectly in this box. There we go. Which later on serves me as a type of a propagator for my tomatoes. I can close the lid. I normally would have to put a rubber band all over it because it doesn't quite fit to close, but that's fine. It serves as a propagator to create a microclimate with humidity for the process of seed germination. And this works really well for me. This box is very random. I didn't buy it. I got it in a parcel when I purchased some cosmetics online, and the cosmetics came packed in this box, and I thought this is perfect as a propagator. Now again, you might think that, oh, I'm going to need a propagator. You don't really need a propagator to grow tomatoes. And let me show you how you can do it without it. You can really start with things that you have at home. If you would have a tray, again, this is a typical gardening tray. I would put those pots like this, and then would use cling film to cover the pots to create the microclimate for the germination process, and that would work absolutely fine. If you don't have a tray like this, you can use any type of box that you have. You can use a plastic box that you have at home, or a cardboard box, or a tray, a kitchen tray, anything that you can find. Something that will hold and not let the moisture through in case if there is any leaking water from underneath those pots, because those pots that you are going to be sowing your seeds should have holes in the bottom for drainage. So now that we discussed the pots, and obviously the quantity of them depends on how many seeds you are planning to sow. The way I have learned to do it is to sow each variety, several seeds in one pot like this for the germination process until I prick them and pot them on when they are big enough. But I would not recommend sowing one seed in one pot, because this way you'll have so many pots that it'll take over your house, unless you have a specifically designated place where you can put them, then you can go crazy, obviously. But to save space, and also for the way you will maintain and look after your seedlings when they germinate, it's just easier to keep one variety in one box like this, and then after they grow and are big enough to be potted on to individual pots, then you do that. The compost, like I mentioned before, when I started for the first time and wanted to sow seeds, I didn't know what type of compost I should use because there's so many varieties. the truth is that you can use any compost that you can purchase, either in the garden center or in a market like Tesco's or whatever. It doesn't really matter. What matters is for the compost to be quite fine. So you don't really have to buy seed compost per se, because these tend to be quite expensive. You can use normal compost, but make sure that you remove bigger pieces, like random sticks and twigs, and make sure that there is no clumps, like to make it quite loose. What you can do with just regular compost is, as I shown you at the beginning of the video, I have run my compost through a sieve, and that process removes the bigger chunks that are in the bag normally. And that's very normal, that there is always some twigs and pieces of stuff in your compost bags. But for sowing seeds, specifically seeds, tiny ones like tomatoes, it is quite important to have the compost quite fine and loose, so that the seed doesn't get stuck, for example, under a bigger piece of some twig or something that hasn't been properly decomposed yet. So that would be my only advice when it comes to choosing the compost. The variety doesn't really matter. So the only other thing that you might need is, well, you will need water, preferably in a spray. I'll explain that, why this is important, when we get to using it, and you will see for yourself. Obviously, some kind of labels, and make sure, if you're sowing more than one variety, make sure that you write the name of what you're sowing, because later on you will want to know which variety of tomato you either liked the most, or you will want to know that for the germination rate, which ones performed better than the others, because that's always the case as well. So labeling your seeds in pots is quite important. So once we have our pots, we are going to fill those pots with compost. Okay, we have the pots filled out. I don't specifically push very hard the compost in. I don't want it to be firmed quite hard in the pots. I want it to be quite loose. As I go, I remove any random bits that are bigger. I don't want them in there. And these are the pots prepared for sowing the seeds. So what we do now is we take the tomatoes. So I'll take each one by one. These three are the cherry tomato. This is my ultimate favorite. This one was the one that I purchased the first time that I was sowing and growing my tomatoes. I didn't know anything about tomatoes, about varieties of tomatoes, about the flavors or anything like it, in terms of what you can expect from the seeds that you choose to buy and then grow. This is so delicious, sweet cherry tomato, and it's giving so much fruit from one plant. You'll get so much. It's unbelievable. I've run out of those seeds because I've used all of them in the past 3 years since I have been growing tomatoes myself. So I repurchased those. These are unfortunately not available, at least here in West Sussex, where I live in UK. Not available in the garden centres, but you can get them online. And then the other one favorite is Sungold, which I am repeating again this season. A new variety this year for me is Sweet Aperitif. So I'm going to try that. And then I quite like beefsteak tomatoes because I like them sliced on my sandwich. Love it, love it. And my all-time favorite, again, is this one. It's called favorite, which is a Polish word for favorite. Those seeds were bought by me in the garden centre here in the UK. Again, along the rubelicious, I picked one cherry tomato when I was first sowing, and one beefsteak. I had no idea that this is a Polish variety. It's available here, and it's amazing. It's really, and it's huge. It's growing, like you can get massive beefsteak tomatoes. I also like to make my own passata sauce from tomatoes. That's why I grow so many. So this is my all-time favorite. Again, it's called favorite, which means favorite. You can buy them here in UK. And then I have 3 new varieties that my husband actually brought from Poland. This one is called Bosman, Ożarowski, and Warszawski, which is Warsaw. I'm going to try these for the very first time, but I think they will be quite amazing as well. And then another that I am going to sow this year is red pear. Again, you can buy it here in the UK, but this one was actually brought last year by my husband from Poland. Anyway, let's not get overwhelmed by the varieties. If you don't know which ones you should choose for yourselves, if you're doing it for the first time, I would recommend doing some research. If you do like to eat tomatoes and you purchase them regularly in shops, pay attention to the names on the labels, and maybe then try to find those that you liked in seeds. You can also save seeds from those that you purchase in the shop, but that's a different video, I would say, at the end of the season maybe. Anyway, let's start sowing. So I'm going to start with the rubelicious, the cherry tomato, and I always check the use by date, and I can see that even though I just bought them, but I bought them online, the expiry date is set for 2027, so next year. So that's a bit cheeky, because I would consider that these seeds are not super fresh then, because normally you would have the use by date would be few years ahead. I like to be quite careful with opening the packages, not to break the dates information, because then in a few years, if you still want to use those seeds, you want to know if they are still good. I don't know if seeds can actually get out of date, but from what I heard, the older the seeds get, the more difficult can be for them to germinate. So for that reason, you want to make sure when you buy your seeds, you want to check the date, basically. So tomato seeds are super tiny. This is it. I hope you can see them. And in one pot, I would probably sow, should I go with 5? I think I'm going to go with 5. So just dropping them on the surface. Voila. The seeds are in the pot. Because I'm growing so many varieties, I think if I'm doing 8 varieties, 5 of each, you should take into account that some of the seeds may not germinate. So it's always better to sow a few more. So if you want to only have 2 plants, for example, make sure that you sow 4 seeds so that you have 2 spare ones. Okay, and make sure that you label them. I have my labels prepared. I put the name of it. I do not put that it's a tomato seed on the label because I will know that these are tomatoes. But I do put the date of sowing on it, because then once you start growing more and more and more and sowing more seeds, you can quickly lose count of what you sowed when, and then when you can expect the germination, and you know how long has it been. Come on. The next one is sweet aperitif. And I want to be quite gentle with these, because these 2 varieties that I bought this year in the garden center, both of the packages hold 10 seeds only, and the cost of one packet was £4.50, which is absurd if you ask me. That's mean. Again, tiny seeds. And again, I am going to do 5. In one pot. There is really only 10 seeds. I have 3 left on my hand, and I can see 2 in the pot. This is like gold. Always make sure you seal your packages very tightly so that you don't lose your precious, expensive seeds. And remember to put the label on. So this is the sweet aperitif. I'm going to do the sun gold next, so I'll put the label in. A useful trick or tip if you go to the garden center and will want to purchase your seeds, always make sure that you check the expiry date, and have a look on the stand where the garden centers have the seeds. If the date on the packet is within 2 years, for example, have a look at the back of the whole section, because garden centers usually, at least I've noticed that, they usually put the older seeds, so with the closer use by date, to the front, so that people who do not check those things, because some people just don't, and that's fine. But if you want to be quite cautious of that, have a look at the back, and usually there is the fresher seeds at the back of the whole pile. Again, I am putting 5 seeds of the sun gold. There is 5 more in the packet. Next one, because it's close, red pear. I've had these seeds since last year, like I mentioned. They're still in date until 2028. We have the label, so I'll put it in there. These are loose in the packet. There's quite a lot of them in there. Oh, that's way too many. Okay. I'll move these to the back. And I'm just going to go ahead on a speed up video with those 4 beefsteak varieties that I have here. The process is the same. These are the seeds in their pots. So the next step is going to be to sprinkle a nice layer, not too thick, but just to cover the whole top area of the soil, of the compost, with vermiculite. And again, this is something that you don't have to use it. You can do that with the compost instead. So just take a very thin layer, and again, make sure that there's no chunky bits in your compost, and just sprinkle it on top of it. Do not squash the seeds and do not push them inside. They are fine just sitting on the top layer of the base that you prepared, and just give them a nice little blanket. The good thing about vermiculite is that it's very light, so it doesn't squash the seeds, but it also holds moisture really well, and that's what we want. Now that we have our seeds prepared, the last element of it is going to be watering it, and I recommend using a sprayer rather than a can, because as you've seen, the tomato seeds are super tiny, and if you would use a can, the likelihood that you would push the seed down into the compost is very high, and it's just better to use a sprayer that is giving a very light water on top of it, but make sure that you water it properly so that the compost gets moist. We want the compost to be moist, but not dripping wet, so that if you lift your pot, you don't want the water to be dripping from the bottom of it. That means that you might have overdone it. But we just want to moist it from the top so that the seeds can absorb the moisture. And then after that, we will cover that. So you would either put a cling film, or you can put them in the propagator if you have it. And I am going to use the box that I've shown you before. And then we just put it on the windowsill, on a sunny windowsill, because tomatoes needs sunlight and warmth to germinate. So the sunniest windowsill that you have in your home, put the tray there and just wait. So let's just give them water. So I am going to move my pots into this box. This should just fit just about. There we are, so the labels are inside. There. I just need a rubber band to put on that so it sticks, so it holds. And that's it. That's the first step of sowing seeds is done, of growing your own tomatoes. If you do want to try this year, I highly recommend. It's very rewarding to grow your own fruit and veggies, and especially if you grow something that you like to eat. So I highly recommend. I wish you luck. I hope for a very good germination for everyone. Do let me know in the comments what varieties of tomatoes are you growing this season, and how far along are you if you have already started sowing your seeds way before. Do let me know how you get along. Also, do let me know if you find this video helpful and useful, and if you would be keen to see the farther process of how to handle young seedlings, how we prick them and how we put them on. And I would be happy to make like a series of tomato growing, maybe. Do let me know if you would like to see that. Thank you so much for watching. Again, good luck with your tomatoes, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!